Okay, yeah. I was kind of like thinking about some of the information. It was like involving June 14th, 1992, baptism at the Mormon Church on a Saturday morning on Flag Day. Um, okay, in the street in Frenchwood, Texas, as Galveston County, the Alphabet's is 213. Okay. Actually, my full name, WadeASVPriddy, Arian Skyans of Latin, amongst other things. But the thing with this is that, and once again, the telepathic brainwaves thing about um, it seemed to be, ultimately, just a normal baptism, but it seemed to be like ultimately it has reflected participating factors going through the circuit and certain factors that seem to have led to more so of an academic based upon the experience of linguistic alphanumerics and really the memory is minus the fact of being all 35 um, is really putting into perspective more so of like a fixture being attached or detached or intellectual or internet protocol, um, networking or, public or private, degree, non-degreed or degreed or, some idea of above or below the equator, um, or ground zero or, thing about, stationary engineering and logic circuitry and anatomy. Yeah. So like, in any case, so like I was kind of like thinking about that, but ultimately, it had led to the thought of like region 1 and 0 of binary numbers of computer programming and language. And the thing with it is that it had got to the point of nuit comptus minus the one word in the Book of Thessalonians, Transfiguration, alphanumerics of 192. Okay, combined with the U.S. $1 of a nuit comptus. And nuit being 79, C being 3, and its symbolic representation at a minimum, like demanded requirement of like 59 PTIS. Um, the alphabets are like 204 minus 192 is 12. Okay, the thing about it is that it's like the quarterback thing about the football and the spherical quadrants of like globalization, the international finance management, as well as like a double opposite in relation to computer um, architecture, platform, embedding and encryption in computer programming and language. And what the all of this is to, symbolic representation and linguistic alphanumerics is it's like multi-international banking systems or a vice president network being used of importing and exporting. In any case, yeah, so like it seemed to be that ultimately, it had led to, an experience. And I had mentioned, I'm going to make this real clear about the baptism, that the water was warm, okay, on a Saturday morning. And the thing about it is that at the time, in 1992, um, Southwestern Bell was still like a predominant, like real within, range of like a basic automatic, blink of an eye memory of like Southwestern Bell, reach out and touch someone and let your fingers do the walk-in, okay? Well, anyway, like at the baptism, okay, the guy's name is Rick Deese. It was like at the baptism that was like he's not the actual person that actually baptized me, but he's the guy that did the reach out and touched like my chest, my heart, and said, "Wait, it like lives here, okay." And the thing about it is, okay, and that was my first thought, or Southwestern Bell, reach out and touch someone. Well, that guy really did that, okay. And the thing of it is that that was my first thought was Southwestern Bell, okay. I mean, for real. Um, and I kind of like was kind of like smiling, when Rick Deese said, "Hey, Wade lives here," and he reached out and like touched my heart. Okay. Well, I didn't really think anything other than I was thinking, well, yeah, it better live there, And, it's kind of like the heartbeat of America. It's like kind of like all these thoughts are going through my mind. And at that time, I mean, I didn't know anything about alphanumerics and linguistics. I mean, ignoring like A1 steak sauce, wasn't even. I didn't even know it was even considered alphanumerics. Although I knew about algebra using like letters of the alphabet, single individual letters in the alphabet as a variable, which is not alphanumerics, okay? It's the thing about it, okay? Um, and the algebraic test of inversion that suggests that informative computation Does the answer equal the results of does or does not equal? But anyway, so like, just getting off into it, okay? But anyway, and it ultimately led to, a Six Flags Better Business Bureau bird baptism. Now, that was like 19, June 14th, 1992, okay? And I made a statement that, after that baptism, that not many days hence, you shall be, um, you must be first be baptized with the water, then not many days hence, you shall be baptized of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost, okay? I've seen it both ways biblically in the King James Version Bible. The one thing about that word hence seemed to be about the Hindenburg, the flamboyance, that would even suggest maybe the thought of it seemed to be the word, yet it seemed to be the thing about anatomy in the Oval Office, yet at the same time, the thing about, um, the Eggman, as far as like fertility and many factors of like anatomy in the way of like globalization, like a spherical quadrant, or the football, or anatomy of ovaries and testicles, and in relation and that word relation at an academic degree intended use for academic, yet in linguistic alphanumerics is considerably quite a bit about pronunciation. Not that it ignores degreed intent. Um, it's really not that, but it seemed to be that there's really more involved. Because, it's really like available information. And I haven't found any major university really anywhere that even teaches alphanumerics. And as close as it really gets is, like algebraic equations involving, a variable, not assigning a specific. The only thing about alphanumerics is that it's absolutely accurate, either forwards or backwards. And the MSN about, linguistic alphanumerics is probably when I realized at a certain point that I was going to combine, a number, an alphanumeric number, and do the alphanumeric and linguistic alphanumeric analytical and symbolic studying with the point of MSN and NSM 13, 14, 14, 13 being 55, like heaven and the sky, okay? That's when I really decided, when I decided beyond like 5 years of alphanumerics, by itself, it had ultimately got to like, okay, now about the linguistic and get, really serious. Because, at first when I was like thinking about the study of language, okay, my first thought was like, hey, like I already thought I studied English, okay. Um, and even with alphanumerics, I didn't even really think that, but when it got to the word linguistics combined with alphanumerics, the study of language, it was kind of like, hey, I thought I'd studied it, but really with alphanumeric combined with linguistics, with a symbolic and analytical, had ultimately, now this is like February of like 2026, okay. Um, I read, what I wanted to know and needed to know about principles of digital audio. Um, but it has led to the Boolean chart is the thing about it of, audio production of sequencing, characterization, and sets of six. But on a Boolean chart, there's symbolic representation that's of Stargate. Um, yes, it's an issue what access means. It seems to be, the thing about, even like when OPEC uses the E as the energy, not exporting. It's kind of like I noticed that in this area that the networking was like international law. It's straightforward. There's not any idea of like contra or cross referencing or situational. It's use is exactly what it is, and its use as any other thing would be maybe not the international law and law firm of all that cross referencing gets to the situational and everything involved with cross referencing, even in religion, and it's kind of like reading the King James Version Bible as compared to the Mormon, um, the Book of Mormon, Church of Jesus Christ Latter Day Saints. Um, Although the Mormon Church of Jesus Christ Latter Day Saints is like the American religion, okay, but it gives that principle of like region one that way of like North America. I'm in Pearland, Texas right now, okay. Um, do I need to say USA? Yeah. Well, anyway, my name is Wade, okay? And once again, the thing, really what I'm getting to is I'm ultimately getting to that fact about that. Well, anyway, all this information that you'll see on my channel on YouTube.com is WadeASVPriddy, P-R-I-D-D-Y. That's WadeASVPriddy at YouTube.com, okay? And the thing with this is that it's kind of like, we international, okay? In Houston, Texas, electronic power is like all 181, or subconsciousness minus Chase being 181. And the thing with this is that, I kind of like, got to the point that I'm a drummer, okay? Um, and, you'll see me on my channel, WadeASVPriddy, P-R-D-D-Y, at YouTube.com on a PearlVisionVSX and a Strata red with like black hardware, the rims and lugs and everything on the drum shells and the bass drum itself. With like 3 grottos, 4 octobans, and a total of 15 drums, and the normal standard 2 mounted toms on a double bass. Automatically the 6, with 2 on each bass, being a total of 6, and a floor tom and a snare, a hi-hat, and all that stuff, and um, all that stuff like, just 8 custom cymbals is predominantly, thing. Well, anyway, now I'm getting a Pearl Vision VSX in a Strata Blue, and it's going to be a total of 35 pieces, as the same that you're seeing on YouTube.com at WadeASVPriddy, P-R-D-D-Y, at YouTube.com now. It's a 35 piece of like every single piece of the drum set, including, hi-hat, cymbal stands, the rototoms, the octobans, each individual drum, the snare, and, all the cymbals are totally of like 35, including, the hardware stands and everything, yeah. So like anyway, in case, I was kind of like thinking about that because, I'd mentioned several factors of the Stargate program, and it ultimately originated into, the thing about, Ford Aerospace, and Starlink and General Motors of OnStar, and the combine of like a Star, Lincoln, Star, which the Lincoln Continental hood ornament came first as the rectangle hood ornament of International Finance and Management. Even, like tennis courts on 9-hole golf courses, of Sand Software and International Finance and Management. And, what that is, you know, uh, golf courses that consider themselves like a country club, Thing is that ultimately, me being a drummer, okay, it's kind of like been really since 1979, really my entire life, okay, based upon, but my real first drum set was at the age of like, in 1979 in any case. Okay, thing is that it has ultimately led to like previous, presentations with me verbally speaking, like you're seeing and hearing now. And the lighting that you're seeing on me now is an HD colors, a kaleidoscope splendor of colors that is a 3D fractal animation. It's like a live mural. Okay. And and there it goes, And amazing. Yeah, so like it's doing that, okay? And it's doing it on purpose, okay? So I'm probably gonna have to, get another and jerk something like within signal strength distance of like some remote, doing that crap on my like DVD player for that projector, okay? So like anyway, yeah, so like I'm gonna maintain a monotone um, thing about it, okay? In any case, okay. What I'm getting at right now is wow, Atlanta Miles, Black Velvet. I'd mentioned her song because it seemed to be almost like the region one thing about Canada being out from Exit 47. Um, I haven't given much thought other than knowing that, other than I'm thinking that there's a love truck stop on the east side of Houston, on the east side, going beyond, Loop 610 on I-10. There's a love truck stop that was there back in the 80s. I'm not even sure if it's still there now, but I'm thinking, and that was kind of like my question was that particular video of Atlanta Miles saying a Black Velvet song recorded for the music video that's on YouTube like now. And it seemed to be that it seemed to be, I've been there like a couple of times for very, very brief, really. Took a look walking around, and I thought I'd noticed something about that in that one particular video, and it seemed to be, like during the Stargate program. Okay, I was like taking different locations, like once again, okay, and it seemed to be the thing about the air raids, okay, going through the Stargate program, and a real intense part of like really based on participating factor of like a real serious like during 1995 thing about it, yeah. So like any case, going through the Stargate program, the memory minus tobacco being 35 in like Austin Powers, or the I-35 in Austin, and Highway 35 here in Pearland. Even the banner in the Eagles Beak, E point pluribus UNUM, and the UM being Los Angeles, and the UM being the University of Miami. And it seemed to be that one thing about that one word, attenuation, with the UA taken out of it being the attention, of the absolute salute, and excuse me, and even now, even AT&T being, thing about ATA, and ATA is like triple A. I mean, for real, it seemed like they have the thing about triple A being like, of roadside assistance. And it's almost like in my mind, I have to think about it because all this is like really, I mean, it's all available information, okay? But it seemed to be the AAA thing combined with AT&T um, about signal strength above what would be normally thought of maybe neighborhoods. A real signal strength with no obstruction, or the stated grace, or the thought of like a commercial venue of living quarter, or a high-rise tower of power, or the difference between signal strength, or what that means as internet protocol, or compared to, or not really compared, but the IP being intellectual property, or having fair use of international law about easements such as intellectual property, normally the idea of generating royalties, or a method of banking. It's kind of like, where's the human capital in your life with all, the endorsements on the backside of most people that's employment would be, on the backside, you know, um, straight up the upper line, but the thing of it is that when it gets to, like the exclusionary rule provision, it's kind of like that line is, it's like the ruler, in proper English numerical composition without the R. The thing about, ATA and AT&T and ATA and AAA is that it seems to be the AT being U and A, and it seemed to be that of the attenuation of digital signal processing speed of special effects and waveform. Quite many factors of the US dollar identifying at a 90 degree of, like an S with one line through it, like the US dollar symbol, being the idea. It seemed to be, just one person, instead of, seeing two lines through the S. The thing with this is that that at a 90 degree looks like a centerline oscillation of the frequency up above and below, okay? Well, anyway, I want to really get to what I'm thinking about Region 1 right now with Atlanta Miles, um, Black Velvet, and, the Black Velvet being the idea of the book of jurisprudence in the law library that has the pastel green, although it is one of the colors of Sprite. Sprite has a two-tone, and that is the thing about it, is that it has a two-tone, shades of pastel green. One of them is a match with the thing about the book of jurisprudence, or JP being, JP Morgan Chase or Justice of Peace. And what that is with the North American Free Trade Act is the idea or relation between NATO or North Atlantic Treaties Organization, with the P being the principle of the R being visible and pronounced, as compared to county and country. And Justice of Peace in that way's participating factor would seem to be Ulysses S. Grant is the factor of all this information, combined stood along with Pell Grant, like foster grant and adoption as relation of a Pell Grant, like presidential, executive, legislative, the word Pell with two L's. And it seemed to be like in the Houston area, that Elton gets to the Marmalade sky, okay? And Trump saying, make America great again, okay? In 1972, on a Saturday, it was like, and now it's automatically the Stratosphere. I have a PearlVisionVSX double bass drum set, okay? And it's Strata colors. It is the three R Strata red, Strata blue, and Strata yellow gold. I choose to say yellow gold. The gold would include McDonald's golden arches and the river in penning for gold, or being baptized during the gold rush, on the Wells Fargo stagecoach. Is the thing about it, or thought of like penning for McDonald's chicken McNuggets with a Chinese walk, looking for Calamity Jane's pearl, in the river. Yeah, and the thing about the pearls and the clams and Calamity Jane and Pony Express and American Express Bluebird prepaid, card, has all the colors of the midnight blue, the pastel green and blue, and combine like the ratio that's seen on the 1040 EZ form of specific durations of the combinations of the colors of like the pastel baby blue and the pastel kind of green, and like a ratio at times of the combine. It's like almost like Ford Aerospace using Starlink as like a global positioning system as the GPS of local gridding of like geographic information systems. Yet even involving like VSAT, like General Motors and OnStar, and Lincoln Continental, the hood on it, identifying the rectangle as international financial management of import and exporting. Okay, including the idea of international financial management of SAN software, and the acronym SAN being like a securities and annuities network and storage area network. What that is in warehousing and real estate. It seemed to be whether or not if a deed restriction is or has or having the thought of fair use as an easement as intellectual, yet the IP address has the same factors, and the exact opposite of the IP is the PI, and actual spelling the PI of the symbolic representation of pi r squared. Okay, the x is not the multiplication with that particular form of computation of symbolic representation pi, which looks like kind of like Stonehenge, and with like kind of like a margin of half cycle above below, when it's really about the waveform and the frequency within if it needs to be parameters or absolute values, what a 90 degree is to parameters as compared to the absolute values seem to be the thing about it. And the Israeli flag that way as a 6-point star, identifying like the electronic schematic symbol of the triangle, even the pyramid on the backside of the US $1 bill, and all the alphabets are like Harris and Egypt and Israeli, with the Israel with the one I being the alphabet 73 in Union, not limited to. But the thing with it is that it presents the three major as the 3-point. Okay, and it seemed to be the combine of like two triangles identifying delta forces, and which the mouth of the river is identified as a delta, and in electronics the delta is a triangle, an electronic schematic symbol. Even the thought of maybe why one pronoun, 4 types of pronouns cannot be used as a subject, because a pyramid is a 4-sided, but it's only one side of it being shown as a triangle. It's the thing about it, and seem to be even involving that as a particular factor, like even the Great Britain's flag, same colors as the United States, red, white, and blue. And it seemed to be involving the 22.5 multiplied by 6 is like 135, the actual degrees of a hockey stick, and a hockey puck and a Swiss Klondike ice cream bar, and the columnar ratio, and how Geneva, Switzerland, and Columbia presents the factors of like Brazoria, seemingly, Columbia pictures giving the impression of the Statue of Liberty. But it seemed to be the thing about Columbia pictures that would suggest maybe, not that it has to be a limit of high school, or the fact of using the District of Columbia as a school district. And the thing about the method of banking being in the bank, normally identified on K television in the Houston area anyway, as the District of Columbia. But it is an acronym, an initial abbreviation, as dimensional clause, direct circuitry, degreed circuit, really of a Stargate program. And my thing about, the Lincoln Continental and Ford Aerospace and General Motors and the combine of like Starlink and OnStar as Star Lincoln, Star, the Abraham Lincoln Night Vision Shuttle Government Stargate program. And the thing with this is that it has the factors of like grayscale in that way of night vision. And it seemed to be the thing about, AAA combined with like AT&T. Both are three-letter acronyms, as is Route 66 being Michael Jackson's song, It's Easy as 1, 2, 3, ABC, being Route 66. And the acronyms of BBB being Better Business Bureau and Bird Bath Baptism. Okay, and that seemed to be the thing about Friendswood, Texas at the Mormon Church on Flag Day, Saturday morning, June 14th, 1992, is that the street is, I've seen it three ways at the actual location, seemingly the Six Flags baptism. Seemingly the thing about Astroworld, turning into Six Flags, and then moving to San Antonio and becoming Fiesta, Texas. Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, and the Alamo, and all these factors that seem to be involving the EBT, electronic benefits transfer of supplemental security income involving Health and Human Services, and the acronym of Health and Human Services being like 35, and the acronym of Social Security Administration being the alphabets of 39, and a difference of 4. Yet it seemed to be the difference of 4 between the SSA and the HHS being like 4, like FBI minus CIA. The thing about it, being 4, yet the first number of the prefix of the White House seemingly being identified as 1995, the Midnight Blue, is the thing about the American Express Bluebird prepaid now card. It is a 15-digit prepaid card. Yeah, so like, there had been like, issues, and it seemed to be that really, if the Vice President Network is presenting, having even recognized and being used as intellectual or an FDIC claim, by saying, that I mean, if it's really the Marmalade Sky of 1972 dictating, the colors of the Coast Guard as the front lines of the beach front, or protected waters not limited to, I'm not sure if it's still the same. The last time I looked was like decades ago, really. It was 200-mile protected waters around the United States. The thing about a kingsmanship, okay, and a moat around the kingsmanship and the bridge seemed to be the thing really involving what jurisprudence is and justice of the peace. The idea of like legislative, probably more so than executive, but going through the Stargate program, I mean, the degree, going through the Stargate program is not really the excuse of it not being degraded, because it's really, going through a Stargate program. Going through like a 10-year participating factor wasn't even my thought of a Stargate program. It was really only based upon the memory. I mean, pretty close. I mean, it's like really intense for really all the way through it. But I mean, the first 4 years, 3 months, I mean, it was like really, really, really seriously. Yeah, the thing about it, yeah. So like, in any case, so like, it was like, pretty intense for like a 1-year period. And, I mean, even going through it, I didn't consider the Stargate program I mean, it's like 25. After I was like on YouTube, putting myself on YouTube with like the special effects lighting that you're seeing on me now and behind me, which is the HD colors, kaleidoscope, splendor color, which is a 3D fractal animation. It's suggested as a 3D, probably more so with the anticipation of an additional thought. It's really two-dimensional. I mean, it's like on the surface, okay, expanding and contracting. It really doesn't show the depth, but I'm assuming that that would automatically be the thought of knowing that all these other 3D animation and like seeing specific patterns of lasers, like you're saying, in addition to what looks like a live mural of a kaleidoscope pattern, is probably the only thought in combine of available information, knowing that it would probably really be what you're seeing right now as 3D. Even the thought of maybe the dual lens of like what is seemed to be a factor of like Black Moon Rising, which is a saying of like an 18-wheeler. It's a Tommy Lee Jones movie, but it seemed to be a factor of you know um uh, brain surgeons, and optics and my thing about the Sony NX 100, which actually has a 48 powered magnification, and 24 of it's like optical, and 24 is like digital optical. It's a combine of 48 powered magnification on that one particular deal. But it seemed to be, that Black Moon Rising movie with Tommy Lee Jones seemed to be the thing of like what you're seeing really not. But it's like a dual zoom lens on the 18-wheeler, time, distance, and speed, yet the guy running is the same progression of like the depth of 3D animation, yet the dual zoom lens on the 18-wheeler is like a combine of both, yet the guy running in front of the 18-wheeler, it's like just the depth of 3D animation and a slower pace of like increased size the closer it gets. It's like three altogether, okay? But it seemed to be something about that in like um 1995, okay? The thing of it is that the Soviet Union presidential jet is like purple and gold, and Trump's jet is known to be that likewise in addition. But the White House of Washington D.C. is the year 1995 is the only time that I know of the FBI actually using the acronym other than the word federal, suggesting that it's not limited to the U.S. dollar, and the FBI protecting regions of motion picture doesn't really seem to be, sort of like, Fairbanks. Yeah. So, like, I mean, going through the Stargate program seemed to be like a real serious, intense of the military barrel deterrent of the mind's eye. And the thing about it is that, okay, one more time, okay, the Dream Theater's Sacrifice Son, the producer, Randall Garcia, okay, it shows George Bush in it, okay, and he's talking, but it seemed that George Bush in that video is doing something that his father did previously that was shown of his father, and they're zooming in on his lens. It's showing him on TV, recording him on television, showing the television as he's on the television that's in view, being recorded as, zooming in on his lips, okay? And it's almost like the read my lips, and if my memory serves me correctly, I think it started showing some kind of static signal strength that would be the idea of signal strength, okay? Um, George Bush was doing that like in the music video. The music video, Dream Theater, Sacrifice Son, but there was no static. Um, it didn't result in any idea of static really at all. The thing about it is that, I don't know if it's just, for my eyes only, at times, but the thing of it is that George Bush did something of what seemed to be in the music video of like what his father was like about that, but it presented, information that way of an awareness, a perception that I'd gotten involving like Stargate programming, like 1995 in that one particular music video, because the similarity is the cargo jet. It's the same design, okay? That's the Soviet presidential jet, okay? Which has like 24 wheels. I previously said 18, but I'm realizing that really it has 24 wheels on the landing gear and 6 for the nose landing gear, a total of 30 wheels on it. And it seemed to be the thing about Vantage 30 now, is the thing about it. And that cargo jet, it's the same design, but an army green, okay? It's a cargo jet and the Soviet Union presidential jet. Vladimir and Trump, Alpha like 88, okay? Yet George Bush seems to be the thing in between. George Bush and like Barack Obama seem to be the thing in between, like, William Jefferson Clinton, Al Gore, and like Chevy Chase at the 1992 presidential inaugural ball, and Donald Trump. Yet it seemed to be, the Oldsmobile Delta 88 at the time of like Delta forces and a persuasive technique of thinking, or the alphanumerics that would suggest maybe the alphanumerics of 177 minus 26 being 151, or subliminal message minus, the factor of 26, which is normally the idea of like God, guard, game, lie, or, in any case, or mental telepathy minus God, or telepathic power minus God, or the alphanumerics 151, Holy Spirit, secret service of Jesus Christ, okay? The thing of it is that it ultimately gets to the thought of all that information, and the thing of it is that it presents ultimately, between like Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt, the New Deal Act being 88, and the thing about Oldsmobile Delta 88 identifying factors of like Highway 288, and if 288 is Vladimir and Trump identifying only what George Bush means to that music video, Sacrifice Sons, with the producer Randall Garcia of Dream Theater. I mean, if it's ultimately, George Bush and Barack Obama identifying factors which seem to be the ingredients of the additives, preservatives, and byproducts that had been listed as FDA approved, USDA approved, and that might be a misconception whether if USDA approved is the same as FDA, or the thought of graffiti and confetti, or appreciation or depreciation, or whether or not if a stationary engineer is involved or not involved with a commercial venue of living quarter, or just a building that might maybe give the similarities, but be a public building, or maybe even an embassy that's just not the commercial venue of living quarter, that's not affected by television programming or deed restrictions. An embassy is not necessarily the same, although it might look, be like, made of, I-beams or glass, and all that, and still be a building, given the impression, and maybe really a non-degree, issue of, identifying maybe what a local area network or wide area network or worldwide network is to, whether or not if it's compatible or not with like VSAT communications, or, within that range that way, or dimensional clause or direct circuitry or degreed circuit of Washington, D.C. Yet, Washington's in alphabetics 130, and television electronic God. I mean, automatically, it's my thought of being beyond the thought of high school. It's not ignoring the thought of a high school diploma, um, or even a GED, which is really, involved, like with Star Wars, Return of the Jedi. Um, not that it has to be Star Wars, but, it seems to be, the intellectual property of, what's being used on a chess set is normally the idea of like, the Pawn Star, um, or experiencing economic factors of a vice president network, and not, realizing what availability means geographically, or having access and, experiencing, either appreciation or depreciation. I mean, or even knowing the difference, or even looking at it that way, maybe even talk about it and know the difference, but not really have the degree terminology that really puts in perspective, I mean, at a large scale, of like many having the right to assemble and not even realizing that that's a categorization of them being assembled, whether, I mean, knowing it or not is really the issue, and really is the issue. And even more so of a non-degree, not knowing any better, or knowing or being led to believe that that's even involved with, like, a normal day. Um, yeah, so, like, certain factors about, even the Stargate program involving we international or participating factors is led to, like, realizing that, like, I'm a progressive heavy metal, rock star, okay? I originated as hard rock, okay? A lot of concerts in the summit in, like, during the 1980s, okay? Um, and a lot of bands are involved in, Geneva, Switzerland, and some are, some aren't, or the Statue of Liberty, or the idea of, like, Columbia presenting what would be maybe the only thought of, like, having fair use as an intellectual easement of, like, practice makes perfect as a standard. And as a drummer, really, that's really the way it is for maybe a lot of people that are experiencing, during business hours as employment, or, maybe not necessarily the freedom of what seemed to be supplemental security income now of benefits that originated going through the Stargate program, really, but now seem to be, as projected as the thought maybe would think that maybe, it has led to, the way it really is right now, okay? And hopefully, when I realized, like, a lot of bands sing about each other's songs, and I recognize that, okay? But it's kind of like, now it's kind of like all the bands that I really started listening, it seems like they're focusing and quite a bit on the entire situation of the prefix of the White House being like Elton John songs, his initials, EJ being 15, and the prefix of the White House, 4, 5, and 6 being 15, or face. Somewhere in my mind, the thing about, Faces International. So I'm going to do it again, yeah. And right now, like, once again, this particular person is, the idea of, like, what's in a mailbox is as LASIK laser corrective eye surgery on the west side of Houston, not far from what was in Marathon Oil. I'm trying to get that reflection out, but she has the blonde hair, blue eyes, and LASIK laser corrective eye surgery in the surgeon's name on the advertisement for the west side of Houston. At the time, is like Jeffrey, and his last name is, like, not easy for me to pronounce. So, but anyway, yeah. So, like, anyway, so once again, that seemed to be, the thing about a current resident. Okay, and real quick, I'm gonna do it again because I'm including some other information, and I think I'm gonna just leave it at that, like, right now. But the thing is that going through the Stargate program and realizing that a lot of bands were singing about Elton John songs has ultimately got to Lucy in the Skies with Diamonds, okay, and a Marmalade Sky, and a Bryan Adams song, like, using seemingly Elton John's lyrics of Lucy in the Sky. Follow the Girl with Kaleidoscope Eyes has ultimately been, I mean, at first sight, I mean, for like real, once again, like, wow, look who's in a mailbox, okay? The thing about a current resident, in a mailbox, it seemed to be, of the significance of, like, once again, a Mercedes-Benz on FM 518 in Pearland. And that this particular person in like a package of, like, current resident identifying, coupons, and this is, the one that seemed to be the current resident of, the thing about, really even a pronoun. Likewise, in addition, every time Mercedes-Benz was, in front of me, beside me, behind me, in oncoming traffic, every single time, and it was like the first time was like as a landmarking factor of, like, a laser. Didn't even know a laser was involved, okay? But looking back at the memory, and it was only the second time from 1979 to 2022 is when I knew that served as a point of origin from 1979 to 1983. Seemingly a 4-year difference. And the first prefix to the White House of 4 identifying ultimately years later going through the Stargate program in memory minus being de facto, or Memory Minus the Factor being 35 or NASA, and the Marmalade Sky of Elton John's song of 1972. Even now, my PearlVision VSX, and I'm getting, and I have some of the Strata Blue, but I'm getting what you see on my at YouTube.com at WadeASVPriddy, PRDDY, YouTube.com is a PearlVision VSX and a Strata Red. It's a 35-piece double bass drum set, okay? And I'm getting a Strata Blue. I have some of it now, but I'm fixing to get some more of it, okay? In any case, so it'll be a total of 35 pieces, likewise, in addition, all blue with the pasty color sound 900 symbols in blue, okay? Thing with this is that all this information is going on, and the thing about it is that all this information is led to the Marmalade Sky being like the PearlVision Strata colors in the Stratosphere of the Marmalade Sky of Elton John 1972 on a Sunday. And the only thing about the Strata Red, it's almost like, Bono, the lead singer for Like You Too, is a factor of the US dollar in 1992 with the word seclorum spelled with 2 U's is the thing about it. And it may have been years prior, but when I really realized in 1972, after a baptism, a guy knocked on my door. It's almost like the perception of knowing a Better Business Bureau bird baptism and Route 66 and, Wyatt Earp, the ERP exclusionary rule provision of executive power, sovereign immunities, and governmental amnesties has been a factor of a Stargate program. My way of thinking had been studying linguistic alphanumerics really beginning, not immediately, but I mean, maybe, within a 10-day period after that baptism, which ultimately is now a Six Flag, Better Business Bureau bird baptism of a Astroworld and Six Flags, because the factors even Sarbanes and Oxley financial instruments of SOX compliance, and the thing about the colors of the Chicago White Sox and the Boston Red Sox, ultimately the barrel of fun Astroworld being a huge centrifuge. And what a centrifuge does when that's spinning around for phlebotomy, it separates the red and white blood cell. It's the thing about Chicago White Sox and the Boston Red Sox and Boeing in Chicago. And the Boston Tea Party seemed to be the thing about it, involving, the thing about even the Good Samaritan, or the absentee thing about certain other factors of a carbon footprint, absentee voting, or a mechanics lane of a trading energy that seemed to be the thing about the reason why high school yearbooks publishers don't identify themselves, probably because all the political science terminology you've heard before of projected estimates of now, this being February 2026 of what seemed to be, not limited to the thought of Ford Aerospace, Starlink, and General Motors OnStar as a combined Starlink and Star, Abraham Lincoln Night Vision Shuttle Government Stargate program, or the Lincoln Continental identifying the rectangle on tennis courts of 209-hole golf courses. What seemed to be Ulysses S. Grant, a false grant and adoption of combined student loan with a Pell Grant, the Pell being of presidential, executive, legislative, and the word Pell with 2 L's going to a Holy Seagull, with 2 L's being 137, Clear Lake, Texas, okay, of NASA Road 1, and FM 528, they're identified as both, okay, FM 528 and NASA Road 1 in Clear Lake, Texas, as that, okay. And what NASA Road 1 is to the US $1 and a Holy Seagull, and the color of the space shuttle in black and white in the ratio. The thing about Univision, the 3 pastels in the black, the 3 pastels in the white, or even a Remo black dot drumhead, and an Aquarian Power white dot, are really what seems to be the Eurodollar region 2 of the summit meetings in Geneva, Switzerland. It's the European car of Lexus LFSA and Mercedes introducing a smart car, being 71 in Pearland, or the Z71 of Chevrolet Silverado, or Galveston County in the area code of Los Angeles 213. And the C71 thing about, being Pearland is smart, the smart meter, the smart for 2 car, including the Scion IQ, and a possible high score, the IQ being 200, or a plenipotentiary, or transportation, or James Law unit is the thing about, in my mind, the big shipment in the Port of Houston, including the Chevrolet Geo Prism and the Hyundai Excel. Ultimately, Geo Prism is Geo Prison, spelled with a Z, being 109 is 110. Ultimately, the Alphabet's 247. A Robert E. Rubin quarter is the thing about it. And, and a quarterback being like a bicentennial thing about a 200-year celebration. And a drummer on the backside with the Statue of Liberty and, the 13 stars. And all that information, okay? So, going through the Stargate program, and when I realized for the first time that memory had been a huge thing, certain parts about it, really, the real thing about a military observant of mind's eye, seemingly the thing about the Dream Theater, music video, Sacrifice Signs, and the information identifying, what is now the Vladimir and Trump, even the memory of Oldsmobile Delta 88, or from Theodore to Franklin Roosevelt, the New Deal Act, New Deal being 64, or Robert E. Rubin, the Secretary of Treasury, Robert E. Rubin, Rubin being 64, Rubin being 69, like Texas or Jehovah, even Mexico, although Mexico is not Region 1, it would probably be more so considered Region 0. I'm not real sure what to think about it, but it seemed to be, the thing about proper numerical composition, and, linguistic alphanumerics and certain factors of algebraic test of inversion in algebra, which uses letters as variables, but yet in alphanumerics it's an absolute value going forwards or backwards. And that's the M is N thing about, the Pentagon reserve reverse and, intelligence and opposite is the M is N, and 13 is 14, 14 is 13, the alphanumerics is 55, heaven in the sky, okay? Hopefully now the memory of the Marmalade sky of the Elton song, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, okay? And all this information, and this particular person, if my memory serves me correctly, 1983 is the thing about right here. And this being now February of 2026, that's a long time, okay? The thing with this is that, it really seems to be the thing about factors involving, follow the girl with kaleidoscope eyes and all the information. Because, I was looking on YouTube, 3D animation, it's phenomenally. I couldn't even recognize any kind of looping. I don't know if I'd even call it sequencing. It would be the automatic thought that, it might, at some point, look like it's repeated itself and looped as at least, the idea of at least one, loop. Considered to be the idea of sequencing. Yet, as a customized preset of sequencing, but on YouTube it was showing what you're seeing is animation, but it's phenomenally, unreal phenomenal, and it was available to actually purchase at the time, but at the time when I went to actually do that, it wasn't available. So I started looking for, DVDs for my projector, what you're seeing now, and really the only one to really get, is what I have now, which is the HD colors, kaleidoscope splendor of colors. It's 3D fractal animation. It's really 2D, but what you're really seeing, and I'm assuming that's almost the anticipation availability, what, availability means geographically in economics, is really what you're looking at. Like behind me is, in addition, 3D animation and different types of lasers for special effects and combined with what looks like a live wall mural, which I'm actually inside of a tent right now in my own home. Considerable manufacturers started taking place when I was on YouTube. I'm a drummer, and I'm predominantly, more so on the Christian rock, hard rock, and progressive rock. More now, really, I really originated as like hard rock, okay? The thing with this is that all this memory minus tobacco seem to be the thing about really the Marmalade Sky and NASA and like, I-35 in Austin. And Austin Powers being 84, or fake news being the idea of 84 lumber, or lumber being 71 in Pearland. The thing about an MC in the neighborhood only reflects the idea of like monetary and domestic, okay, of neighborhoods as compared to gross national product like, high rise towers of power and commercial venues of living quarter and U.S. patents, copyrights, and trademarks, okay. But anyway, yeah, so like, anyway, going through the Stargate program, the memory had been like a lot of locations of like, music videos of before, during, and after of like a real serious idea in my mind of like, I just, of like air raids going through like a circuit and the memory. And when I realized that memory was coming back after a 25 close to 30-year period, which really originated, really, I'm assuming that any factor of like entertainment not participating would possibly be not remembering really an intense part about, a Stargate program, and even more so the reality of like a military real deterrent of the mind's eye, which is really, the real thing about it. But, the thing about the colors of the Soviet Union presidential jet, and, the midnight blue, in 1995, which is, the most intense part of it, including the World Trade Center, um, showing it's 2001, okay? But, I don't want to, deviate, too much tolerance of panoramic academia, peripheral tolerance, I want to say, in direction really, my point was like really getting to the Atlanta Miles, Black Velvet song really seemed to be the thing about the baptism in Friendswood, Texas, and of like Sunset Boulevard, but the actual street, I've seen it three ways: desert, desert, and deseret of the Mormon Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The actual location of like the baptism on Flag Day, June 14th, 1992, okay? And like 1 block away is like falling leaf, okay? And there were like several factors that had significance. Remembrance, I mean, would have only been maybe not me being on YouTube as a drummer. I might not have found a reason to even want to be on YouTube other than like knowing that really automatically I want to be on YouTube when I like, invested in some equipment and in my lighting, okay? So like that's what I was doing like beginning really in the year 2020. I'm at the age of 61 now. Born August 6, 1964, okay? Which seemed to be the thing about Roe v. Wade. Now, with the W being 61, he being 61 years of age, okay? And all that fake news is seemingly of like the wooden buffalo nickel. With 1D, it's like 76. 2Ds is like 80. And with like 3D, it's the thing about isometrics, beyond the signature. And actual participation seemed to be the thing about, beyond the paperwork in the classroom. Not limited to, the brain work about academics in the classroom. But I mean, actually participating in the academics that is beyond, the classroom. It's the thing about isometrics and 3D and, the perception of beyond, the bank, okay? And that's the way I kind of like see it. And the thing that I was like going in direction is that, that seemingly being the thing about, wooden as 3D being the alphanumerics of 84 or the fake news, Trump refers to, yet about a commercial venue of living quarter that is not fake news. But it seemed to be not the excuse of Roe v. Wade, the alphanumerics of 38, ROE with a W, and the significance of the pronunciation, which is a real big major thing. Normally, of like linguistic alphanumerics is quite a bit about pronunciation. It's not that it's ignoring the degreed intent, practical application of compatibility and that word relation of the degreed participating factor. Yet, the idea at degree level is like the U.S. dollar at a 90 degree with one line through it of a U.S. dollar symbolic representation at a 90 degree, being like the center line of oscillation, identifying frequency above and below. But the thing it is that Canada seemed to be the thing about, falling leaf. There were several locations during the Stargate program, even remembering it. I mean, this factor of we international participating, or thought of like separation between church and state, or unions, musicians unions, um, and what the state of the union is to a musicians union or other unions participating factor now seem to be Atlanta Miles um, song Black Velvet and Love's Truck Stop. I think it looks like it was video recorded at that one particular location, and it seemed to be a thing of a Bryan Adams music video, not limited to It's Gotta Be Love, but automatically, this person here is like, at first sight, hey, wow, look who's in a mailbox. I mean, for real. And, at first sight, thing you've heard, probably your entire life. The thing with this is that, the thing about it is that, a certain factors of, what is like a truck stop is like the only one that I've ever been to that I know of is on the east side on I-10, on the east side of this west 610 West Loop, okay, in the Houston area. I mean, if it's the Vantage Love 30 thing or Secret De Facto, and I'm thinking that Atlanta Miles, Black Velvet was recorded there. I mean, it looks like it anyway, at least partially, because the farmhouse they're showing in the video was another location. I mean, I was listening to that song, years before, but I didn't have the connectivity, or the memory was not yet coming back. I didn't even know that memory had been a factor, although I knew air raids were taking place going through a circuit. I did not even consider the Stargate program. It was really only after I was on YouTube and beginning 2020 to 2022 and realizing that my memory had been coming back about all these factors of like an extremely intense 1 year. Hopefully, I'm not sure if it's a 2 year period of military determined the mind's eye, okay? But the thing with this is that that farmhouse is the location I was actually taken to of that music video. And I'm thinking that it's more so probably up Friendswood, Texas at the Falling Leaf. Another location in Marie Osmond, seemingly, the thing about Falling Leaves. And me actually being on a dolly, being like taken there and like strapped to one. I mean, it's like really, really seriously not cool, okay? The memory is like, a circuit breaker. I'm not quite grasping, the intensity of all that, but in any case, okay? But she's like there and she like kissed me, okay? On the lips. I mean, if that's really the significance. But the thing it is okay, is that I'm not sure if that's, in front of the Presley, Elvis Presley mansion. The gates were there, but they were, if my memory serves me correctly, open. But it seemed to be, the thing about Route 66 and Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley. And her initials like my initials, my name, Wade Sterling, being like the alphabet 137, yet Lisa Marie, the L&M of like Lockheed Martin, yet legal media, yet at the same time, during Michael Jackson, her time with like Michael Jackson, like, almost like Univision, and a conversion from like analog to digital, and, and even, Michael Jackson songs singing about, thing about as easy as 1, 2, 3, ABC, and from ABC 13 Houston to ABC 7 in Los Angeles, like a difference of 6, which is off the alphabetics of like 52 and a vice president network, okay? And I'm thinking, I don't know why I'm thinking that would have been the thing about the Falling Leaf. I mean, I'm almost thinking that it would have possibly been, the Elvis Presley mansion with the gates open. Yet, Marie Osmond on the front cover of the Parade magazine in the Houston Chronicle in 1997 was like Lubbock on I-20 at a location. And I thought of maybe, have I driven to Ford lately? In a Bright Adams video, but there's like a whole lot of available information. Combine is kind of like grasping, the big picture about it. Yeah, so like the thing about it is Lisa Marie is like legal media, and even the Social Security Administration's number 12 and 13 being L&M of Social Security Administration's telephone number 1-800-772 1213. And the thing about it is that it's like Lockheed Martin and legal media. Lisa Marie's initials are likewise in this, but the thing about her and Michael Jackson seemed to be something about that in that way, and the connectivity of Route 66 in Wyatt Earp and the thing about, even in my mind, Chevrolet Avalanche Z66 in the World Trade Center, or Route 66, I mean, thing in the past, and it's almost like Southwestern Bell, the blue public phone, and the thing about it, and it seemed to be the thing about, AT&T taking over Southwestern Bell, seemed to be the thing, even including the idea of like solid state, or the code blue thing about, all the public phones beginning in 1990 were beginning to be removed around the entire Houston area. I think the entire continent, if not the idea of a method of banking as COVID ID 19, the alphanumeric 72, COVID ID 19, and money. COVID ID 19 seemed to be the idea of like a method of banking involving maybe the thought of maybe many factors that I'm not going to like get into right now. My point is really ultimately, the Atlanta Miles song, Black Velvet, and the color codes of the book jurisprudence with the black back being the pastel green, and the black velvet being like the Bermuda grass on a golf course on a putt. And the black velvet being the idea of the golf course, and the state statutes annotated, Vernon state statutes annotated, and like, every state statutes annotated based upon the idea of Houston, Texas being electronic power, we international, selective service, and considerable amount more in subconscious mind shades. The thing is that that being all in the Pearland, Texas home, Alphanumeric USA, Purple Heart USA, Pearland Home USA, Pearland, Texas Home USA, yeah. Pearland, Texas USA. Anyway, yeah, so like Attenuation USA, okay? Anyway, so like, but it seemed to be, that combine of that baptism on June 14, 1992, of Flag Day, the significance of Astroworld turning into Six Flags and moving to San Antonio and remember the Alamo. The following thing about it seemed to be that farmhouse. And it seemed to be potentially even that the HUD and FHA thing about free and clear. I mean, it's almost like the 1040 EZ form of a prepaid tax, a percentage on an annual being a total refund of a percentage, given these similarities of non-taxable income and supplemental security income. It's like the farmhouse being some idea of wide earth and exclusionary rural provision of rural routes, yet HUD and FHA of a principal proper English numerical composition. Atlanta Miles music video of Black Velvet. I was taking that location, okay? I don't remember really everything about it, okay? But it seemed to be the thing about information involving free and clear, what is normally identified. Normally, it's not that it has to be a mortgage, but normally a 30 to a 40-year period of homes being financed and a percentage paid in the event of actual defaults, and prevents it from being in default. Not any claim on it is due a full amount on coverage that was never used or claimed, and getting a refund on that type amount of a 30 to 40-year period, or maybe even a combine. The thing about, participating factors between corporate and business law, or family and corporate, making a grade beyond the idea of ventures and mergers is like the idea of like ventures and mergers as like marital, consensual participation, of like how soap operas actually present the presence as family law, really as an in-law, a presidential, executive, and legislative that way in every home of neighborhoods. And when like corporations like venture and merge, there seemed to be a thing about the Department of Transportation of Plainville Penitentiary and Lockheed Martin, the font size of ventures and merges of like transportation, the VIN number and the exit ramp, and the font size of Lockheed Martin in Star Trek being the font size of an exit ramp. And it seemed to be the thing about Rampart Emergency 51, the television series, and quite a bit about it. Even the thing about an eccentric triangle that would maybe present the idea of greater or less than, But like a protractor, that sometimes you've heard of imaginary lines, but it's there. Um, I mean, it's the automatic thought of algebra. I mean, that the formula works, and that it's pretty close to the idea of squared band, a radius multiplied twice by to its own meaning and value of what the radius actually is identified as, multiplied by 2. Although pi r squared, the thing about, 3.1416 seemed to be the combine of 3.30 or advantage of 30 um, in that way. But anyway, yeah, so it seemed to be the thing about the falling leaf in Friendswood, Texas at Sunset Boulevard. Seemed to be the thing about it. But anyway, it's already going on an hour and 10 minutes. It's already early. It's like 5 a.m. in the morning. Right now, 5:30, pretty close to 5:35 a.m. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead. It's already going on an hour and 10 minutes, but I want to include that because it seemed to be the thing about the Love Truck Stop. You know, and that one thing I'm thinking that Atlanta Miles music video Black Velvet was recorded here in Houston, but part of it was that farmhouse, an actual location of a Stargate program, Abraham Lincoln Shuttle Government Stargate, um, Night Vision, uh, Abraham Lincoln Night Vision Shuttle Government Stargate program. Um, and I'm just really grasping the capacity of the memory. And it seemed to be only when I really started calling it the Stargate program is realizing that a 25 to 30 year period had taken place, and quite a bit about I didn't remember. I didn't even know that memory was even an issue. That's how intense it was. Um, I didn't even really recognize quite a bit of a duration or anything about it. But I mean, military recruitment in and out is kind of going through Korea all the way to the Soviet Union of the olive colored uniform, seemingly of Qatar Airline of Korea at certain locations, and even a combine was seen to be the actual same location. I'm not sure if it's the same location or the thing about the Department of Interior and the combine of a Hill HX-150 helicopter in the same colors as the American flag and British flag, red, white, and blue. That's the same colors of the American flag, the Hill HX-150. I mean, the Hill HX-50, excuse me, helicopter, okay. There's an infomercial, it's called Luxury Time, and there's a guy in it that's likewise the same location of the Hill HX-50 helicopter infomercial, but it seemed to be the same location. I'm not sure if it's the same day, the same place, but it's the same thing about the Department of Interior. I'm not even sure if it's the same time of day, but it seemed to be, the same inside setting. But it seemed to be a classroom at the time. Yet a Korean thing, yet not a Korean thing. I'm not sure if it's the same location. Or the idea of Mercedes introducing the Smart for Two thing about that location. Ultimately, the thing about Qatar Airlines and the olive colored uniform, similarly representing Mount Olives, of the transfiguration of the Lord Jesus Christ after he resurrected, going to Mount Olives, an olive colored uniform from Korea all the way to the Soviet Union. Ultimately, even the idea of an appraisal of a resurrection, even the thought of what is now of the 100 Club of the class of 1981. Similar thing about even the color code of portable stands. Was seen to be the idea of inside a huge room in the Soviet Union before, during, and after. Was seen to be the colored uniform, not limited to, but the olive colored uniform of complete silence. Seemingly the thing about a appraisal of a resurrection really being the idea of walking in the spirit, okay? But in any case, yeah, so and all that for it is written stuff. Yeah. The thought of it actually being a movie, but it's my memory thing about it seemed to be the complete silence. The before, without the portable stands. The during, I'm not really sure, but it seemed to be the final it's almost like the exiting thing about it. Like full attendance and like the olive colored uniform, not limited to, but complete silence. The thing about it in the Soviet Union involving even the Kremlin, okay, and a bunch of gold and white music videos that are like seen on YouTube.com. Yeah, quite a bit seemed to be the thing about the White House and the Kremlin. The thing about the Kremlin, to me, is really not about criminal law. It's about the 5 eccentric triangles on a wall, not limited to. Seemingly ultimately the fifth dimension song, Up in the Air, My Beautiful Balloon. The fifth dimension is, it seemed to be the thing about the book Orion's performance monitoring of the hot air balloons presenting the actual colors of a rainbow, and Chevrolet Geo Prism presenting the colors of a prism and a diamond, yet the colors of a rainbow, yet the book of performance monitoring, and AOL being the Orion and the Arian and Aryan of One Justice Park. But anyway, it's already going on. This is probably one of the longest videos I've made, like of like a presentation involving the Stargate program of a military determined, and not limited to me on the drums. Yeah, on my channel at WadeASVPriddy, PearlVisionVSX at YouTube.com. But I thought I'd include that because it seemed to be like the thing about Friendswood, Texas, in Galveston County, and Chevrolet Silverados E71 in Bearland, and telepathic brainwaves in Los Angeles, the area code 213. And the thing about the 5 eccentric triangles on a wall being the exact opposite of Lockheed Martin's 3 intersecting axes, being a 232, and the 5 eccentric triangles on the wall at that location of federal, state, and local authorities, of a DC thing, of a detention center, of HTTP :// being a symmetrical, asymmetrical design on A row, but on the wall about, a shelf on the wall. And ultimately, the absolute values that originate as a point of view is a straight ahead look and a complete 180 on the wall starting out that ultimately led to 5 eccentric triangles. In any case, it's the exact opposite of 232, like an atonement of Green Acres. Similar thing about Lockheed Martin. The 5 eccentric triangles have the exact, not really the exact opposite, but a 323, one of the latest area codes of Los Angeles. They seem to be presenting that information between cornerstone of like loop 610 squared at Bracewood and like Post Oak, going straight to Transco Tower to turn into the Williams Tower, and Univision that like used to be like right there at Highway 59 and West Loop 610, and the Houston Post diagonally, the inside and outside of Univision and the Houston Post. Yet the Transco Tower, all that information, Chase and Capital One side by side, and 3D International, within like, maybe 1 or 2 blocks, and the Galleria in that area. Ultimately, even the Art Institute of Houston, where I went to study music video, television, audio production, right next to, Marathon Oil Tower Power with like Data Foundry inside of it. Is the thing about it. Within, walking distance, like a sidewalk, like within like 30 feet, okay? And LaSIK laser corrective eye surgery now on the west side of Houston. Similarly, all the factors like, once again, of, not limited to, yeah, so like, very much so, yes. And, so like all that information has like really been completely on my mind. A whole different way since I put myself on YouTube.com, beginning in 2020 to 2022. This is February of like 2026 now, okay? Considerable amount is like really not my idea of cool, although it is happening, The thing with this is that thinking about it in a whole different way than before I was on YouTube, or even during while I was on YouTube, really. All these things were taking place, and now I'm in a tent in my own home, okay? But anyway, like I'm getting a PearlVisionVSX in the Strata Blue. It's going to be a double bass, likewise, in addition, 35 pieces with a pasty color sound 900 symbols with the blue, yes. And I'm actually trying to get all of it in a chromium alloy that's as shiny as chrome. Everything. Hardware, stands, hi-hat stands, cymbal stands, roto, rocket tom stands, and all the hardware, RAMs, lugs, everything, like it's shiny as chrome in a chromium alloy. So like anyway, yeah. So like it's already going on. God, it's going on like an hour, 19 minutes, fixing to be an hour, 20 minutes here in a second. Right now, yeah. So like anyway, I think I'm gonna just go ahead and kind of like get this uploaded and take a break. Okay, there it is. Yeah.